anything goes in perimenopause and it's considered normal. Irregular periods, irregular emotions, irregular, hot flashes. And he's like, anything goes and is considered normal, but that doesn't mean you have to like it. And we have ways to override those issues because it is frankly 10 years of perimenopause before you're menopausal. And menopause is actually defined 1 year, no period. Okay. So that's the true definition that doctors go by. So that's one of the things that's like, okay, how am I going to make it without, killing somebody or killing myself? And seriously, it is so possible to get your life into a normal, balanced way.
Hey everybody, it's Dr. Rimka, and we have a functional medicine OBGYN, women's hormones, women's health specialist. She also does say some men. So she's a dude OBGYN as well. So when Cindy and I met a few years ago, we were both kind of like the onboarding, the primary panel with scientific advisory board. I was the only non-physician. I'm gonna toot my fucking horn on that one. 3 MDs and me for a nutraceutical firm based around hormone optimization and kind of longevity, anti-aging. And that's how we met. And one of the vice presidents was like, "You're gonna love her. Like you two are gonna really hit it off." And we did. And we've been like this ever since. So it's been great professionally, how we have taught each other things, and personally. All right, you guys, she is a functional OB/GYN. So she has been catching babies and then sometimes having to operate to get them babies out. She now specializes, she kind of retired. Is it like a year now that you stopped catching babies?
2 years. It'll be 2 years in March.
Okay.
Right as the lockdown happened. Yeah.
Okay. So she was working towards, because you're a little bit older than me, right? Are you like 60?
62. I just
62.
had a birthday.
Okay.
And I'm 62
All right.
now.
All right.
Yeah.
So just to I say that in context because people were talking about perimenopause and menopause and the changes, and you're a woman and you've been through things. You've birthed a baby, you help women birth babies, and you help them transition to all parts of life. And right now she kind of specializes, she has a private practice. Tell them where your practice is.
I live and work in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. So it's about halfway between Aspen and Vail. And yes, there's a bunch of us that live here to take care of all the richy riches. So, and people are having babies still. And yeah, I'm just not doing the baby thing. I'm doing all GYN. I'm doing hormones and I'm doing the surgeries. I do procedures in the office as well. Yeah, but all women's health.
Okay. Tell them a little couple things about your office that are unique. Like one that I've been dying to tell people about is the photobiomodulation bed. Tell them, some things that they might find at your office that they wouldn't find somewhere else.
Well, first off, I'm a doctor who won't give you a hard time about being vaccinated or unvaccinated. How's that sound? That's a rare bird in this day and age. Okay.
Right.
Most people come to me and they're so afraid and they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Are you going to give me a hard time?" I'm like, heck no, I'm not. I'm just going to take care of you. So that's one thing. So if people need to know, I'm very open-minded. The other thing is I'll go into the photobiomodulation. So I have a near infrared light bed. So near infrared light is the light that you cannot see. It's not in the visible spectrum. But this bed, it looks like a tanning bed, and it's got red light and green light and then the near infrared. So it has a lot of different healing modalities all wrapped up into one bed. People look at it first, it's like brilliant orange. I got it this like amazing color, because it was custom to pick the color. They walk in, they go, "Wow, that's pretty racy." And they go, "Can I get a tan?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. There's no tan. There's no UV rays in it." But there's over 50,000 peer-reviewed articles about the healing properties of infrared light. And the interesting thing is there's like 500,000 articles that have been written, not all peer reviewed, but very important stuff. Every single NFL, and because we're going into Super Bowl and we're in Olympics, okay? The Olympic training facility in Colorado Springs here in Colorado has one of these beds to help people recover. It also has been suggested that this be called performance enhancing. So they're trying to make sure, they're trying to shut it down for athletes for before competition, which I don't know how they can do it.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
You can't detect
so that's
it,
how
though.
potent it is. It's bad enough they do that with peptides. So she also,
I know.
so she does bioidentical hormone replacement. She uses this bed that is pain modulation, anti-aging. I mean, what I love about this is that you were this type of surgeon that was thinking, how can I provide faster healing and pain relief without a drug? I don't want to prescribe some of these things, but I am cutting people open sometimes. You know?
Well, and that really was the push, is how do we take care of pain with post-op pain? And so I specialize in doing what's called ERAS, and that's early treatment. We do a lot of things to make sure that people have less pain post-op. But then it was like opioids. I don't want to do opioids for people, period. Bottom line, I don't think they work. What they do is make people not care about their pain because they're so loopy on them. So it doesn't really take care of the etiology of the pain. And I think that the red light bed helps with that. Now, let me tell you, the interesting thing too is I've had my regular people who come and use the red light bed, near infrared light bed. I just call it the red bed. Anyway, they come and use it. They are like COVID free or getting over COVID. I had somebody who had long COVID after one session in the bed. Oh my God, he was like so much better. After 3 sessions, he was like, I'm back to normal, which was good. It was really great.
Yeah.
And
the
no
bed
meds
is potent.
involved.
Yeah. So you guys who follow me and you see me always packed in these light panels, these beds are like the light panels on steroids. Okay. Like I'm just giving you an idea because I'm looking at buying the same bed, and I tell people the prices. I'm like, look, if you're thinking of a $400 panel or an $800 panel is a thing, these things cost $70,000, $100,000, $150. Like these beds have a huge. There's a variance, but typically you're going to be in the $50,000 to $150,000 for a photo bed.
Yeah.
And they're incredible, and they have a tremendous amount of. Even though, let's say you don't specialize in mental health, the mental health benefits are through the roof. Neurotransmitter upgrades, people with Parkinson's, depression, all kinds, MS get tremendous benefits from this. So if you're local to Dr. Hall, people need good care. So let's talk about the fact that women often don't get good care as they age. All right. So let's talk about this because I'm 49. I, just kind of recently had a birthday, you and I both here. And, I'll full disclosure, you guys, Dr. Hall is the first one to ever prescribe me progesterone. We were just having some conversations and I was like, so can you just call me some man? She's like, yes, girl. Because I can tell you right now, you need it. I said, okay. So that's what some people, I've been doing this long enough. I know exactly what's going on. I don't need to see labs. And here, let me tell you why, what we're going to do. Now, again, she's my friend and we're, professional courtesy and that kind of stuff. But that's what a lot of women are struggling with. Like a lot of the questions is like, what they're saying is like, nobody talks about the transition. And so it's hard for women to know what's normal, what's not normal. And what I was going through was just, my sleep was disrupted. My mood is the same. I was like, and I think we were just kind of talking about it. And you go, Stephanie, it's your progesterone. And I was like, oh, right. I am getting to be that age, like, oh yeah, things could be changing. And it was like, let's just try it. And I was like, oh, praise the sleeping gods that all made the difference. Right. So, and then I had labs, you guys, I did run the labs, stuff like that. But a good doc like her typically is like, look, let me tell you what I know. So by seeing good physicians or good clinicians in any way that you actually work with to spend more than 5 minutes, they can figure things out often without even seeing labs, because a lot of people want to know about the labs. So some of it is like, what's normal, what's not normal, right? Or whatever, like what are the signs? I think what some people want to know, because like there's things, right? People talk about adrenal fatigue, insulin resistance. If they're already dealing with thyroid or adrenal issues, it's not going to be good for you, mama. Or if they're already dealing with insulin resistance, why does everything get so bad? Like what happens? I think there's that first to go with, and then we can maybe talk about the mental health piece, like why people get anxious and depressed, right? Like, so whatever you want to go with based on your experience of doing this for decades and seeing, tens of thousands of women go through this. How can we help the women?
I'm going to go back a little bit and just a couple of sentences about residency. When I was in residency, I worked with a really smart doctor. He was amazing. And, we're talking about perimenopause. He says anything goes in perimenopause and it's considered normal. Irregular periods, irregular emotions, irregular, hot flashes. And he's like, anything goes and is considered normal, but that doesn't mean you have to like it. And we have ways to override those issues because it is frankly 10 years of perimenopause before you're menopausal. And menopause is actually defined 1 year, no period. Okay. So that's the true definition that doctors go by. So that's one of the things that's like, okay, how am I going to make it without, killing somebody or killing myself? And seriously, it is so possible to get your life into a normal, balanced way. And this is how it relates to women and where they are on the continuum of hormones. So when you're born with X amount of eggs. You don't make any more, you don't get any more, you have them, and they start to age right away, okay? What happens is you're allowed only so many ovulations during your lifetime. And ovulation is when the egg comes out of the ovary. And once that happens, that ovary is pre-programmed to involute and create something called a corpus luteum. This is a lot of medical jargon, but what it does is the corpus luteum makes progesterone. So you can see when you stop ovulating, or if you're ovulating irregularly, you're not going to make progesterone because that corpus luteum can't be made. So the first hormone that leaves women is progesterone. It's not estrogen. Most of us are estrogen dominant. If you're packing a couple extra pounds, you're probably estrogen dominant, right? If you're testosterone dominant, you've probably had irregular periods all your life and you're probably PCOS. Well, you're also progesterone low too because you're not ovulating. Testosterone will override that. So there's a couple of instances where maybe if you're a normal menstruating woman, you're having a monthly period, you're probably fine, but it can still fake you out. You can still have those cycles and not be ovulating or not creating a corpus luteum.
I think that's the one women don't know. They think whenever they have a period, they ovulated. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. I know. They don't know that.
It doesn't have to be joined like that. Now, let me tell you what is joined is hormones are joined. So if you are missing a hormone or overactive on one hormone, the other ones are going to suffer. So the balancing of the hormones is the important part. And remember I said, most women, when they get into perimenopause, they'll pack on a few pounds. And it's for whatever reason, okay? Because that's a coping mechanism. I don't know. But you pack on a couple of pounds and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I'm estrogen dominant. It's the chicken or the egg phenomenon. I'm not exactly sure how it happens, but once you're estrogen dominant, we have to get that under control and we have to balance it with the progesterone. What's really interesting is I've been a huge proponent of oral progesterone. And the reason is because it has one side effect and it makes you sleepy. And you already talked about that a little bit, that it's like, okay, I can't sleep. I'm waking up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, like it's time to get up. Or maybe I think I have to pee and you don't have to pee. You just get up and go pee and it's like, oh, well, that didn't do it.
And everybody, you know what they all think? They all think it's cortisol. That's the first thing. Everyone's kind of gotten used to what cortisol is and adrenal fatigue. So they all, I know my cortisol's wacky. I know my cortisol. I'm like, and you test your cortisol, like your cortisol is fine, pumpkin. It's your progesterone. Yeah.
Your cortisol in your sleep is supposed to go high. It's what keeps you alive while you're asleep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That steroid is what keeps you alive. So your highest cortisol should be in the morning anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you get cortisol tested by serum, you get a morning one and an afternoon one, and your afternoon should be the lowest one. Okay. So that's what I know about, adrenal. But I tell
Yeah.
you what, your adrenals can be taxed because your progesterone's out of whack. Okay. So you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
sleeping.
Yeah. It's
Okay. So the
fascinating.
other,
Everybody wants to hook onto that. They're kind of hyper focused on cortisol. Everybody talks about it, and I can do a 24-hour cortisol. I'm like, your cortisol is perfect, honey. You really can have a beautiful, like, it's doing what it's supposed to do, but they're really committed to this. And I think it's just, are they just resistant to hormone replacement? I'm wondering if that's what it is. Like, if that's like a psychological, I don't want to replace hormones because it means I'm old or something. I don't know if you run into this.
yeah, I think it could be, but by the time someone gets to my office, they're to the point where they're pulling their hair out and they want something to
Yeah.
help them. I have very few people who don't try the progesterone, and the progesterone actually works really quickly. I don't know what
Yeah.
your response was, but within a couple of days, you're like, wow, I slept through the night.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm waking up refreshed instead of waking up tired. And
Yeah.
see, that goes hand in hand with that whole cortisol thing. I'm waking up tired. Maybe it's my cortisol. Maybe it's my thyroid. Maybe it's all of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really does take some evaluation and a good listening doctor to sift through this. And when I was in medical school, I was told that the patient's going to tell you what's wrong with them if you listen. Just listen to them. Okay, so then, you're telling me you wake up at night, you're throwing off the covers because you're hot, but you're not having hot flashes during the day.
Yeah, I wasn't having any hot flashes, but I'm usually cold. I'm not cold at night. It's kind of weird. Not a hot flash, but just I'm warm. It's like, that's odd.
Thermoregulation. Yeah. It's so, it's one of those things that people can have that whole continuum of different issues going on, right? I think a trial of progesterone is the most benign thing you can do because progesterone is so safe. And progesterone and estrogen got a really bad rap in 2002. There was research that came out that said that estrogen caused heart attacks and progesterone caused breast cancer. And it wasn't the natural ones that did. They had used Prempro in this study. And Premarin is the horse urine estrogen. Yeah. It's got 11 extra estrogens that humans don't need. Provera is a progestin. It is not a progesterone. It has an extra methyl group. Yep. That methyl group
they're synthetics. They're not real, you guys. So when they study something that's not exactly, that didn't work out because it's like saying fat is bad for you. Well, if they're giving you soybean oil or they're giving you butter, then you're going to have but they, you know what I mean? They conflated it incorrectly. So let's stick with progesterone for a second because I'm seeing questions. So like at least we can help you with progesterone, right? So they're asking, cream, there's topical creams, topical oils, and there's oral. Okay. So you're asking questions. Like I will tell you, because I'm a chiropractor, I cannot prescribe I can't do I can't prescribe progesterone. So have I suggested topical progesterone to my patients for decades? Yes, I have. And
it's easy to get.
It's easy to get. You can get it on full script, Relevate. It's over the counter, so we use topical oils where I will know, okay, that's 40 milligrams or that's 100. I know how much I'm getting. In general, most of us are taking like 200 milligrams oral a night. That's kind of a common dose, right? So we know what these doses are. We can see and we can try. Like I have 25-year-olds with completely obliterated progesterone. I've got to get a 25-year-old girl back her progesterone up. So I'm using a topical and changing diet and changing behaviors and trying to get rid of the PCOS and that kind of thing. Would I be opposed to oral for her? No. And I know we're going to heal and get things off. So I would probably agree with Dr. Cindy. Gold standard me as a 49-year-old woman, I do take oral. Okay. But I did topical for a while. So why don't you talk about the differences of absorption, how it's irregular, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you could put some on this part of your arm and it'd be absorbed, but if you put it like under here, it may not be absorbed. And And plus in the container, it may not be completely mixed, and you might have it stronger on the right side than the left side. And you may be taking a bigger spoon one night and a smaller spoon another night. So there's these inconsistencies, and you tend to have less success when the hormones are bumping around like this. The
Yeah.
idea is let's keep the hormones nice and steady and level, because nobody likes to be like this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
think it's a
that's
good
where I,
solution. It's a decent solution when we have a minor problem when we're transitioning. But I think as if you're perimenopausal, like me or whatever, you're getting, and you're looking to longevity, really kind of whether you're going to call it anti-age, whatever. I'm trying to get ahead of this. My mother went through
yeah,
what I thought was a horrific, horrible, gained 50 pounds, depressed. She was just not the same person. I didn't understand what was happening to her. And I'm like, my sister and I both like, I'm not having that happen. So I know more and I can do more. And I,
just say
not, you know
no.
what I mean? Because she suffered. She
Yeah,
suffered. She was locked in the bedroom, depressed, eating cake. And then that was unlike anything I'd ever seen in her. And then once
that's,
she got heavy, then everything hurt. Then she was food craving. Then she couldn't work out anymore. Then now she's a diabetic, and it's all harder than it needed to be. Right. So I'm
yeah.
trying to like stay ahead of it before it gets to all that. Right.
Good
So
for you. It's a
yeah,
downward spiral, and you just named all those things, and it just goes down and down. And to kind of turn it around and bring it back
yeah,
up,
yeah,
it's hard to gain the ground once it's been lost, but
yeah,
it isn't impossible. One
exactly.
of
So let's
I
talk
got
about so the
I,
progesterone for women. So let's say one, I think a lot of the messages I get, I just tell people they want to know how to do all. I'm like, just go to a good doctor. I don't know why they're trying to do this themselves.
yeah,
Like
you
I go
know,
to somebody for this.
yeah. Don't
Yeah.
try to do it yourself. I think that the cream, if you're messing around with that, you may have mixed results with that, and that would be unfortunate. That would be a turnoff in some ways. Like, oh, it worked for 2 weeks and now it's not working. I've heard that story before, because
Yeah.
I can't tell you why it didn't continue to work, but I'll tell you, when I get it from compounding pharmacies made with cellulose, progesterone, and a gelatin capsule, and they can even do vegetarian capsules. They'll make these for you, and they're consistent between capsules up to a certain percentage. And so you want to have a good compounding pharmacy and a doctor who understands how to dose this. Okay. Now, the place that I'm going, the place where I get my progesterone, I've been using them for over a dozen years. They're consistent as the day is long. Sometimes the mom and pop places aren't, because they don't have the oversight by, whatever, triple checking their potency of their raw ingredients that come in, because they're making it right there and
Yeah.
encapsulating it right there. But I'll tell you, doses will shift on some people, but not as often as you think. Okay. 200 is kind of the big standard at the top of the bell curve. And I have a couple a little higher and a couple a little smaller. And I probably have over 1,000 patients on progesterone. Right. And these couple of people, one of the weird ones I was going to mention to you is I have somebody who's got something called catamenial seizures. Did I ever tell you about this?
No,
Oh
no.
my gosh. Every time she'd have a period, she'd start having up to 40 seizures a day. So guess what happens when your period starts? Your progesterone, okay, drops.
No.
So I was looking at this, trying to figure this out. Let's try birth control pills. No, that didn't work. So then we went and we started doing this same progesterone that I'm using on my perimenopausals. This girl is 18 years old, 18 years old, and she's got these seizures. She was trying to be on a volleyball scholarship to college, and
Yeah. Yeah.
she was in a wheelchair. It was awful. Her life was awful. So she's taking 600 milligrams a day. Oh,
Wow.
and she's using the red light bed too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That can help with that. Do
she's
you think
down
it's
to,
related to the GABA? Do you think that's related to like it's because is her GABA tanking some? I mean, we'll have to talk about that one off another time. We got to
we'd
because
have,
I'm
yeah. And you
fascinated
and
by
I
that.
may have to pick that one apart, but she's down
Yeah.
to one or none seizures in a week. Okay. So
That's
she may break
incredible.
through, on occasion, but not 40 a day like she was having.
Wow. And that's
Oh
not even
yeah.
doing a brain therapy. right? She's
No,
not even doing anything. It's like, wow, that's impressive.
no.
So you guys, do you hear that? Huge thing. So people are asking a couple things, right? Do you think the cream would be as good? The cream will get you some results. It's not as good as an oral capsule, she just said. Now, here's an interesting, is the oral progesterone natural? I'm not really sure what natural actually means because that word is a loaded word. So
Yes.
why don't you tell them with how they make progesterone, where they're getting
So
it?
it's bioidentical, which means it matches the molecule in our body.
Yeah.
What
But
makes
they
it
can't pull it
natural?
out of a person, you guys. They're not pulling progesterone out of humans. Okay.
No. And what they're doing is they're getting it from soy or they're getting it from yams. And
Yams.
you have some power in that. Sometimes you can have it put with cellulose so that it slows down the absorption, or you can have it without cellulose. You actually have a lot of leeway with this. And, if 200 doesn't work, maybe 250 does, or maybe 100 works. And I give people a lot of leeway to play around with what's the dose? How do you feel about taking, a capsule? And, do you have
Yeah.
a preference for soy? They're doing organic soy. If you do organic soy, you're getting rid of a lot of problems that way. So, and soy's had a bad rap, and I don't always feel like it deserves what it gets. And this is actually a very small dose of this. But
Yeah. It's
most
where
people
they're
go for the yam.
substrating it from, you guys. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just the substrate of where you're getting it from.
yeah.
It's interesting. They're saying like, what is the minimum maximum dose for progesterone on average? Well, I just kind of said it's hard to say, like, but it's like you guys start with 200 very commonly, and you kind of just see. But she just said that 18-year-old's got a 600 milligram as a dose to stop
I
seizures. I mean, it's why you should work with a clinician to see what works for you. Like when I started taking it, what I discovered is if I take it too late at night, I'm groggy the next day. So I'm best to take it around 8 p.m.
mhm.
And then that works out well for the way I sleep and I don't wake up. But what it has done is actually, I used to wake up at like 4:30 or 5:30 all the time. Like that's when I start my day. I don't do that anymore. I sleep much longer. And on the one hand, I could say, oh, it kind of sucks, but I really wasn't getting enough sleep. That's what it was coming
No, and you're
down
supposed
to.
to get 7 to 9 hours of
Yeah.
sleep, and it's supposed to be good quality sleep.
Yeah.
And you can have really crappy quality too.
Yeah.
No.
So
Um,
average dose, like you guys, it really comes down to you. I saw a comment on here, was interesting. Somebody said, I'm 47 and my OB is recommending the pill for perimenopause. I've never heard of
um,
anybody doing that. Is that an old school way?
no, it's a valid way to do it. You can safely take the pill up until menopause, but at menopause is when the progestin is more likely to cause a breast cancer. Okay, so if you're childbearing years, which 47 is kind of borderline on that,
Yeah.
put it this way, I wouldn't want a kid at 47. That'd be pretty hard. But the thing is, it's bad enough having one at a
Yeah.
normal age.
I know.
But the idea is that yes, you can do the pill, and what the pill's going to do is it's going to regulate your cycle. Progesterone doesn't regulate your cycle. You have to have an estrogen component in there to regulate the cycle. So the birth control pill, or even better yet, the NuvaRing, which is the lowest dose you can get, will regulate the cycle so that you're not bleeding every week or whatever it is. The lucky women are the ones who spread their periods out. Unfortunately, there's people who their periods come closer together, and that's never great. Never.
Okay.
And then if the hormones fail, then I'm going on and doing procedures on them, like an ablation, or we might even entertain doing a hysterectomy if we have to. But, generally we try to do something with medicines first.
Yeah.
Hormones. Yeah.
All right. So let me say progesterone, blah, blah, blah. Did we take progesterone?
Somebody asked, how long do you take it? And
Yeah, I
it's
see this.
funny.
Do we take it till we die, 80 or 90 or, blah, blah, blah. And this is funny. I interviewed Dr. Greg Brannon. He's an OBGYN, and he had an answer.
Okay.
I'd be curious to see your answer.
Okay. So I've had two teachers that taught me hormones. The first one was Dr. Leon Spiroff. He's the professor who wrote our book on hormones for our residency. And
Mm-hmm.
we asked him, when should women stop their hormones? And he said about 3 years before they die. Okay, so that was his, who knows when they're going to die, right?
Right,
It was kind of a
right.
nerdy, eggheadish comment. So then fast forward, and I'm doing my peer review hormonal work and working with Neil Rosier out of California. And he was asked, when should women stop their hormones? And he said, at about 120 years old.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay, what did your
I
doctor
agree.
friend say?
I agree. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm more of the Greg Brandon. Like, why would you stop? Like, I don't understand why you would stop keeping your hormone. I think I don't necessarily even buy or believe the whole perimenopause, menopause is normal, because there are
Yeah,
tribes where women are getting pregnant at 60. They're living to
yeah,
120, and the Putians and Yakutians in Russia, their average age is 120. Some of them are going older. They're living 5 times longer than the centenarians and through the rest of Russia. Women are pregnant at 60. And there are plenty of anthropologists that have traveled around and said they've seen in these tribes, women they aren't doing what like civilized women are going through. So I think
right.
we're destroying and obliterating our hormonal systems much sooner than we're aging much sooner. We're depleting, I mean, look at what's happened to testosterone around the country. I mean, if those levels are getting women, everything is getting tanked. So I don't necessarily. I remember reading some interesting theories around like maybe menopause isn't normal anyway. Like, wouldn't that, like we have so many eggs. Like eventually there's going to be we're done with that. But this whole
Yeah.
process, a lot of primal women don't go through 10 years of hot flashes and shit at all.
Yeah. No, I never
So
did.
we're comparing, you know
So,
what I mean? We're living our
yeah.
Western civilized lives
Yeah.
very unnaturally, very disconnected to nature, very disconnected to the earth, to the sun, crazy chronic stress, adrenal stress, thyroid issues, heavy metal
And all those
poisoning.
hormones work together. Okay.
Yeah.
They all work together. So
Yeah.
when something's out of balance and we're stressed, that's going to screw up the whole system,
Yeah.
and
So
it's going to affect
I'm a
other.
stay on it as long as you can kind of gal,
And I
personally.
am too. People
Yeah.
ask me when am I going to get off of them, and no,
Yeah.
I doubt I ever
I
will.
have patients who are like 75 and they've been on this stuff. You would think they're 50. I mean, you're kind
Oh
of
yeah.
like, you're what? And no
Yeah.
plastic surgeries. It's just their hormones are banging. So they never aged. Their skin never got super saggy. Their bone density never collapsed. They're like,
Hmm.
what? And they just
Yeah.
go and get their stuff monitored and they get their stuff handled. And
I have
they're,
an 80-year-old
you
patient
know,
who's got a 55-year-old boyfriend, and he has a hard time keeping up with her. Okay.
damn.
She is
Okay.
adorable. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
She's one of those ones that looks like she's 55. There's been
Right.
some interesting questions. Okay, so
Okay, yeah.
one of the
See
questions
whatever you
was,
want to answer. See whatever you want to answer.
well, one of them was, I'm 54 and I'm having periods closer together. Is this perimenopause? Yes, because menopause is 1 year, no period. So you're perimenopausal if you're still bleeding. Okay. You guys, let me give you, kind of a public service announcement. If you're menopausal for a year and you start bleeding again, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. We have to look at that and make sure that's not cancer. All right. So if you have been menopausal for a year and you start bleeding again, you must see a doctor, because that is a curable cancer with an easy surgery if we catch
Yeah.
it early. Okay.
Yeah.
So done with that
My
one.
friend just had a tumor taken out of her uterus. I was just with her Saturday night. It was like the largest benign mass that they've ever seen. It was kicking off so much hormone. The pregnancy test said she was pregnant. HCG was so high. So she'd gained all this weight. She's been trying to lose weight, but basically her body was growing, a baby tumor and kicking
Yeah.
off estrogen and HCG. So of course she was gaining weight. And she's
Sure.
60 years old, right?
Yeah.
So she chose to go ahead and have a hysterectomy because there was uterine cancer in her family, and it wasn't cancer. We're stunned. The surgeons are like, oncologists, like, I can't believe that this isn't. But it was weird bleeding symptoms is how she knew, like, something's not
Yeah.
right, right?
It's time
Okay,
to
that's
pay
good.
attention.
Good
Yeah.
PSA. Good
Yeah.
PSA. So yeah, you guys, menopause means you haven't had a period in a year. If your ass is 55, you're in perimenopause. I mean, come on now. Okay. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh,
Perimenopause or denial. It's either in one
yeah,
place or
exactly.
the
Right.
other. Okay.
Like, like, am I not? Like, my last
Yeah.
lab, I'm like, okay, I'm still ovulating. My estrogen's still high, but it was my progesterone and my testosterone were tanked. Could be the carnivore diet. People wanted to know. Like, could be because I've been carnivore 3 or 4 years and there wasn't enough carbs in the system. I've picked up eating a little bit of fruit and a little bit of avocado and olives because I'm like, I want to see if I can start to, and that's why the cold plunging, what am I able to do to activate? But then I did have that moment of like, oh, right, I am 48.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
I watched my mother go through this younger. Let me ask what you think about this. What I was taught, like old wives' tale, like you're going to follow your mother. Like, how old was your mother when she did it? And how old was this? But I didn't start my period till I was 16, right? So like I got more eggs than people who start their period at 10, right? Probably, I don't know. So, but is it similarly kind of like, well, what your mama did or your grandma did, you're probably going to follow?
Yes,
Do you
it
see
is
that?
similar. And we can draw direct, connections between older sisters, mothers, grandmothers. Here's the interesting thing. If your dad has a sister, that's like a mom on that lineage, okay? So she would act like a mother on that side. Okay, so interesting. Let's see.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see what else we're saying here.
I do.
Yeah, Lori, you need progesterone, baby. I told you this already because that's these people who aren't sleeping. And I just don't getting to people tell me they're 55, 56, they're not sleeping, they're having hot flashes, they've gained weight. I'm like, why haven't you seen somebody? I don't understand. But I don't know if it's because they go to their like regular gynecologist and they're just not good. I mean, no offense, Cindy, you know a lot of gynecologists suck.
Is that
You know
really
that, right?
Allison, my niece? Is Allison, my niece, on here? Because she called me
Wait.
Aunt Cindy. I started my menopause at 55, Allison. Okay. And my mom, had a hysterectomy because she had heavy bleeding that they couldn't control because they thought she couldn't take hormones. Okay.
Yeah.
I think my niece is on here. Oh, there. Allison B314. I think that's my niece.
That's your niece. Wait a minute. I'm reading this. Somebody wrote, 30. I thought you said 73-year-old. I was like, I thought, okay, what about a 37-year-old that lost her period due to carnivore diet? Then you should not be eating that diet and you need to see somebody because you need your period back. That is not okay. One of the worst things for women when you're of ovulating fertile age to lose a period is not okay. That's a very serious, you can maybe talk to that, Cindy.
Yeah. We see early, period changes in women who are super active. So gymnasts, notorious for losing their periods. They're amenorrheic because they're working out so much and they have low body fat. And low body fat is sort of the player here because it has to do with our circadian rhythms and how this all plays together. So if you get below, I don't know, 18% body fat, I think you start looking at maybe
it depends a little bit where you are. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. And how much exercise you're actually doing. Okay. Yeah. So that's part of it.
With you, I would say at least see somebody, get some labs, get a good consult with somebody and see what's going on. Could you be one of these rare early perimenopause? Yeah, but I would, if you can tie something to a major lifestyle change, it's probably something around that. And your system might need something a little bit different. Okay. So I would say contact, a good functional. How would somebody find a good OBGYN, Cindy, would you say? So if they can't see you, right, I would say, I've been begging her for me to refer people to her, you guys, you have no idea. But she can't see people in dirt. But I see people all over the place. So if they're in Colorado and stuff,
most of the time people advertise that they do bioidentical hormones. Yeah. And if you go to their website, so it's pretty much a search going through whoever your local doctors are, see if they take your insurance. I take insurance. So people are thrilled that I can at least do the office visit using their insurance. But the problem is most of the hormones are not paid for by insurance. Yeah. Women have always been treated as a second-class citizen. Yeah. So our hormones are not really helping us.
A lot of the good stuff. Another good therapy. What we can talk about it because I talk about low dose naltrexone a lot, which is a medication, and how that can be used for a number of conditions. And I think it's very helpful for perimenopause as well.
Right? It is.
So LDN is a medication, and it's again out of pocket. The FDA hasn't approved it for very many conditions. It is affordable, and I think you get a very big return on investment. But some of these things, unfortunately, we do have to pay out of pocket. but it's worth it. I just can't imagine
Yeah.
going through 10 years of hot flashes and misery and depression. I've noticed my mood change, and that definitely, you guys, progesterone also makes GABA. So, and GABA is the most calming, soothing neurotransmitter you have. It's called the peacemaker. And so there's two different pathways. Some people are really sensitive. So when they lose their progesterone, they are screwed. They aren't making hardly enough GABA, and they are very anxious and very irritable and can't relax and can't sleep. It's horrible. And you replace them, and it's like when you see that, right? Like, which I think it's the beta pathway. I forget.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So,
Yes.
and you give them that, and they're like, oh, then they're like, oh my God, they're usually the women that go, progesterone changed my life. It was like I mean, they're like almost going to cry, if you know.
And
Yeah.
potentially some of those women are the ones who take the 25 and 50 milligrams if they're super sensitive. Okay.
Yeah.
So there
And they'd
is
be
some
the
adjustment.
people that would be given Zoloft or
Yes.
Xanax. You know, their doctor's going to put them on an antidepressant or something.
Yeah.
And that's not what they need. They need the progesterone. So they need it to be able to making the GABA to have that peacemaking signal in the brain. I can give them some GABA too, but I go, why don't we go to the root, which is
Yeah.
the progesterone? Talk about that. So people know period of the year and then pop up one.
Yeah,
Oops.
that's one of those things where you have to have a rapport with your doctor and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what it looked like for that year. Now I'm bleeding again. What could this be? Now, I'll tell you, personally in my practice, I've seen a lot of women after they got the vaccination, the COVID shots.
The juicy juice, yeah.
Yeah, it's been bad.
It's been
We've
bad.
seen people with irregular periods. I had a woman who was in her 60s start her period again. And we did a hysterectomy on her because she didn't want to deal with it at all. And we went ahead and we made sure it wasn't cancer. We did ultrasounds. We did everything. We adjusted hormones. We couldn't get it under control. And we ended up doing that. Now that's pretty drastic, but once it's in you, it's in you. And now we have to deal with the issue at hand.
Right. So let's talk about how do we test or measure progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. We haven't even talked about testosterone. I think testosterone is one that gets ignored and should be talked about. But people want to know how to measure. What's the best? Urine, blood, saliva. What do you like?
Okay, so
talk about it.
What? Doctors are weird creatures. I'm laughing because none of us agree on it. Okay. None of us agree what is the best test. Okay. Yeah. I test solely with serum because the serum is what bathes your cells. Okay. So your spit is not bathing your cells and your urine is not bathing your cells, but your urine is actually what is metabolized. Okay. So there's it's the metabolic testing for that. Okay. Whereas spit, I really can't. I know people love the spit test, and I have not been able to draw conclusions about that. Dr. Rosier brought forth research that said, yeah, it's just not as strong as doing the serum testing. Okay, so
I have found the majority of functional gynos that I know that do longevity prefer serum. I have found the majority of you go with that, and I think a good functional clinician that knows how to read labs, that's all you need. I think things like the Dutch test are amazing. It's what I use. I think they're actually better for clinicians that aren't that good at reading labs. See, that's what I'm honest about it.
I find Dutch too many things to read. Okay. Like my patient's going to tell me when I got her at the right level. My ear and my brain are telling me.
That's what I'm saying, because you are trained to listen.
Piece of paper.
Yeah.
Okay?
Here's what I'm saying. Here's the thing.
The paper.
Because you're 62, and you're an osteopath, you actually went a little bit more natural route, and you were trained to listen. You understand the new young guns are just coming out following guidelines and protocols, and they don't know how to think. So there's a difference here. So I'm going to tell you, like, if you would have put me up against the wall, I'm not seeing a 30-year-old hormone doctor. I'm not doing it.
No, I think that's a bad idea. When you've got somebody who's already gone through it, they're going to have that personal touch. Okay. Because they'll be like, yeah, this is what I did. And this is what my sister did, or this is what my cousin did, or this is what 100 of my patients have done. Okay. So somebody who's older, who's been in practice for a while, is probably going to have a better understanding of this.
Yeah.
And right now, they're just not teaching it fully in residency because hormones have such a bad rap, and
Yeah.
they don't deserve it. They
Yeah.
don't deserve it one bit. We had
Yeah.
50 years of great research that showed that they were safe and beneficial, and they threw out the baby with the bathwater with that 2002 research that was about the horse urine and the
For bear. Yeah. Yeah.
Bavaria. Too many
Yeah. For
P's
bear.
going on.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now we've talked about some of that. Like, again, a good clinician, it doesn't always have to be a functional gynecologist. There's lots of naturopaths that have gone there, you know, longevity. If you look at look up longevity or anti-aging, regenerative doctors near you, those are the kind of catchphrases. So a great guy I work with here, Dr. Frank Manalone, many of you have seen different videos of him. He's an ozone doctor, does a lot of ozone, nutrient IVs, but he's a naturopath. And so he does do bioidentical hormone replacement, and he does do LDN, and he's going to be, you know, he has the power of the script, but he's trying to go with oxygen and ozone and you know, that kind of stuff, and nutrients and vitamin C bags and Myers cocktails, right? Those are the people who are taking time with you on appointments and are interested in the bigger picture kind of root cause, and they're typically going to do bioidentical. One route is the pellet route. Not everybody has to do routes, but that's a bio-T provider. So you can look up a bio-T provider and find one near you. If you're looking, people are asking, well, what kind of doctor? How do I find somebody? Just know
So
most of those will be out of pocket. Some insurance may be paying, but you're going to be paying for some of this out of pocket. It is not a 10-minute visit. This is not a copay visit.
No.
They will spend an hour with you and talk to you and stuff like that.
Depending on what state you're in, too, naturopaths in some states cannot write scripts. Okay.
Yeah.
So
well, most of these
writing
naturopaths,
scripts,
they're MDs. Many of these people, they're like, he was an ER physician. So a lot of people, they're ER physicians, or they're a surgeon, like, and then they get functional, they get anti-aging, they get into peptides, they get into new things. They're like, I don't like what I'm doing exactly. So they look over here and they find different root cause functional medicine, regenerative medicine, let's say. That's kind of like the anti-aging term, right? Like
exactly.
So that's what you should be looking for, you guys.
There's a website that is out on the internet now, and it's related to the place where I did my seminars, how I was taught, and they actually list by state doctors who are doing this type of work. Oh. So it's MedQuest Pharmacy. It's MedQuest Pharmacy, and it's mqrx.com. And I'm not sure I ever talked to you about that stuff, but it's a really good place to start. I can't tell you that they practice exactly like I do, but we all had the same instruction, because you develop your practice as you go along, what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Yeah. I will tell you what doesn't work for me is to give people 6 things at once and expect to figure out which one's working and which one isn't. Okay. I start out with 1 or 2 things, and then I reevaluate. And that's when I'm doing the testing, is 6 to 8 weeks out, because it takes that long for your body to sort of get used to a new hormonal type of balance. And so then I will have people come in anywhere from 6 to 8 hours after they've taken their dose. So if you're a progesterone person, you know, and that's all you're taking, I'll have you come first thing in the morning and we'll draw your level. Okay. So I'll check menopausal women 6 to 8 weeks out after changing some kind of dose. If you're perimenopausal, you don't need to be checked. You don't need any blood work. You just need to take the progesterone until you feel better and are sleeping better. They're my easiest patients. I can make perimenopause people, women, so happy so fast.
So that's interesting for people to say, because people like, I find people are obsessed with testing. Patients come to me and they want to order. I'm like, I don't need that. And they're always like stunned. I'm like, why do you want to spend $3,000? I don't understand. Well, shouldn't we get a Dutch? Shouldn't we order? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, we can do it if you want, but I really find it fascinating. People go, well, I want a GI map. Or I'm like, yeah, you don't need it. I'm telling you right.
No.
Because it'll be often like, you see the history, you know the situation. I'm like, I know you do not have candida. I know you don't have SIBO. I don't need a test to rule that. I know what this is. So you're a hormone specialist. And like what she said a million times, if you see somebody, this is what they do, you tell them through what you're saying, what's happening. They're like, yeah, I got it. And then you can just kind of, you probably need this, you need this. Come back in 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe we test it, or like what, because that's, and every hormone person I've said has said the same thing. Like some of them might, even if they, they do some testing, but it's like, it's the patient that will tell you. It's an art based upon their symptoms and based upon us finding it right, not a lab. Right? It's not the lab that matters. It's the
Exactly.
person that matters. And I think hormones
Yeah.
are one of those that are tricky. And I think it messes people up because they think, I want to make sure I'm in this optimal range. But again, optimal is going to be how you're feeling. And that's very
Mhm.
different than like blood glucose or
Yeah.
insulin, where we know what that is, right? And
Yeah.
we have an optimal, you know what I mean? So hormones are interesting with the aging,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? With the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. It's been a rich addition to me being an OBGYN. I didn't know in residency that there was any of this stuff. I thought it was, oh, give them Prempro. Oh, and then don't give them Prempro. Oh, so it's a lot of bitchy old women running around who are bleeding irregularly. So then we had to come up with, well, what can we do that's relatively safe based on, the literature, okay? And in reality, they're all safe as long as it's tailored to your needs, okay?
Yeah. I have to say, I found many people, like, cause I want to basically, I'll have this website in there. I'll have a couple websites or her website, you guys, so you can try to find providers. I'm ultimately surprised sometimes. Like I have a list of questions like that people sent in. I'm like, sent us. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And some of these like are so complicated that I'm like, why would you want to know this? This is why you go to the doctor. I don't
Mm.
understand. Like, you know what I mean? What's the optimal level of this? What is this? And blood, saliva, urine. What about this? And I'm like, what's the best matrix of testing? And I'm like, why don't you just go to a doctor? You know what I mean? It's like somebody
Well, I'll
coming to
tell
me
you.
for neurofeedback. And I'm like, they don't need to understand every brainwave and what's the best location and why do you need to know that? That's my job. You know what I mean? Like, you're not here to learn how to be a clinician. So I don't,
Every lab
you
is
know what I mean?
different. Yeah,
Yeah,
every lab is
it's,
different too. The baselines and the ranges in each lab are different. LabCorp is different than Quest, and it's different than Life Extension. It's different
yeah,
than what I'm using in my office. And what you need is a doctor who knows what they're doing and can tell from the labs that they're evaluating and the
yes.
story that the patient's telling, and knitting those two things together to make you healthier. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's what I like.
yeah.
So when do you think somebody should start to go into somebody, right? Like,
I
because for
think,
me, I didn't know I needed it. Let me just say, okay, you
yeah,
guys, I'm 49. So it was like
I know.
this last 2 years has been hard. It's the COVID. I mean, the last 2 years, I have a teenage child, you know what I mean? So I'm a mother, I'm a business owner. The COVID happened. I'm like, oh Lord, like I got stressed. I have normal stuff. I have my own life and stuff. And I like got tired. I'm gained a little bit of weight, and I'm like, I just don't feel right. I'm not sleeping great. You know what I mean? My
It was
Shazam.
subtle.
I don't feel like a badass. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like, eh.
Yeah.
So I called up a buddy who's a physician, and I thought I needed growth hormone peptides. I thought, you know what? It's time to, I'm gonna do a little injectables. I'm gonna do a HGH stack. I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna do CJC EPA blend, right? I think that's what
Yeah.
I need. But let me ask Michael, because he's a physiatrist, and my shoulder was hurting. I'm like, oh, I got like this rotator cuff problem. I'm like, what the hell's happening to me? You know what I mean? Like, nothing's working. I'm like, shit, right? So I say, Michael, I just want to double check since you do this all the time. He's a physiatrist, so he's a pain specialist, joint, and I was like, this is what I think I'm going to do. Can you help me with stack that? And then he asked me like 3 or 4 questions. And he
Yeah.
goes, actually, Stephanie, I don't think that's your problem at all. I bet your testosterone is gone. I think we need to check your hormones. I think you're tanked. And I went, what? I was like, really? So I didn't even think about it. right? But
Yeah.
he, listening as a physician outside of myself, I went, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, we don't need to start those peptides if we don't have that ready. I'm like, let's just see. And sure enough, my testosterone came at 0. And my fucking 0. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, girl, no wonder you feel like shit. I went, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And progesterone, and I said, because I had yours and I wasn't taking it. I go, I wasn't sure if I still need it. Oh, yeah, you need it. So, okay. I was like, okay. But see, I didn't
Till
know.
120.
Yeah, I didn't know I didn't understand like it was starting. I thought, oh, yeah, it's this. So, like, what are some of the cardinal signs maybe that I'm trying to think, because I was lucky to have a friend to be like, you need to go. I'm like, this is a problem. Oh, I'm like, oh my God, you're
I
right. So that's the
I
start. Like,
say
I'm like, I'm
work.
at a process. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, things have
Yes, and
changed.
it sneaks up on you, okay?
Yeah.
But it really is what I would call bad PMS. Bad PMS is the first sign that you're not doing well. And maybe it's irritability with the family members. Maybe you shut yourself away when you're, when you're PMSing,
Yeah.
or you don't
I
go to
couldn't
work
tolerate as
because,
much, but you're right. I was having a couple weird periods. And I'm like, I don't have cramps. And I had
yeah,
a few, like, I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I don't have cramps. I didn't
yeah,
even make that connection. Yep. Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
as soon
Okay,
as the
good.
periods start getting
PMS, weird
wonky,
PMS stuff. Things are
hmm
starting, maybe clotting. Clotting, I hear, is that's a common thing. Women start having more, like, the menstrual cycle, like, there's more clots. Is that like a
hmm
common perimenopausal
yeah.
sign that women, okay.
It
Yeah.
is and it isn't. It can be other things too, but that's why
Okay.
you go see a gynecologist, okay? So
Okay.
clots could be something like, adenomyosis, okay? So that's, you need a hysterectomy in 95% of those cases. But
Okay.
if you're having clots and we can control them with something else, we can try that, okay?
Okay.
But generally it is more that emotional component and the weird cycling component. That's when you know, oh, I'm not really ovulating and I may not be making progesterone. Here's the
Yeah.
weird thing about progesterone too. When we're pregnant, we have super high levels of it. Okay. It's the thing in our pregnancies that keeps us from freaking out that we have to push a watermelon sized thing out a small hole. Okay.
Yeah. I was freaking
So,
out.
and you wanted to segue into some of the depression, anxiety stuff. So here's our segue. Okay. And this is really interesting because progesterone has a protective brain type of activity. So it works like an anxiolytic antidepressant. And when you're pregnant and you've got high levels of that, it really keeps you from freaking out through the whole pregnancy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I've had so many women, patients will tell me when they get on hormone, they will say, progesterone saved my life. And it might be because, like, they were so emotionally not doing well in that overwhelm,
Mhm.
panic, misery. And it was like, I'm back to myself. Now, again, this, I say, see a professional, you guys. You need to stack things and replace as necessary as your body goes through as you see fit. I personally do think we're being aged and poisoned to death sooner than we should be. So it's not about trying to act like I'm 25, but I think the process is artificially induced and accelerated more than it needs to be. And maybe my grandmother didn't need to do this, but in the lifestyle that I'm living, I'm going to do it. So I'm
Yeah.
a fan of bioidentical hormone replacement. I think it makes sense for muscle mass, which is a marker of longevity and capability, and bone density. Both of those things, if you start losing muscle mass and bone density, and that happens when that estrogen drops, that becomes when things are dangerous. Cindy was 62. She spent all day skiing today, downhill snow skiing. Okay. That's what you want. You can't do that with fragile, weak bones. And
No.
that, this hormone replacement, actually, the numbers are, it saves more lives because of bone density and, osteoporosis, and stopping it from falls and fractures and things like that.
Now, somebody had mentioned something about breast cancer, and I wanted to put this in. You can do hormones. Generally, it's accepted by most oncologists that if you are 5 years out from your diagnosis, you can go back and start doing some hormones. The other thing is, I'm not going to get into the ER, PR, breast cancer thing, But guess what? We have testosterone, and testosterone will help your bone density. It'll help your muscle mass. It'll help you with energy. It gives you more oxygen. It's considered a enhancing hormone, right? A sport, the bike riders,
Well,
what's his name?
performance, like yeah,
Armstrong
it's
did it.
banned if you're in whatever, but not
Yeah.
replacement therapy. It's I don't think TRT is
It's not that
considered.
high. We're not going that high, but
Yeah,
it is highly controlled. So you need to understand, if you're going to do testosterone, it's got to be by prescription. It's got to be
yeah,
signed for by somebody over 18. You
yeah,
can only get 6 months at a time because it's so highly regulated. But the
yeah,
good thing, what's interesting is we saw men with low T starting to have osteoporosis and osteopenia. And when
yeah.
we gave them the testosterone back, their bones got strong again.
Yeah, much stronger. It's huge in mood and depression, actually, and the correlation with testosterone replacement and even PTSD improvement is extraordinary. I'm a huge proponent of testosterone replacement for men and women. I think it
Yeah.
gets forgotten by too many women. It's
Yes.
important. Somebody sent a message, how can I increase my sex drive? I'm like, testosterone, pumpkin, or
Yeah.
find a new person. Sometimes
More
people are like,
sex equals better sex.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm like, like maybe who you're with isn't a good choice. I mean, sometimes just saying,
Yes.
but often it's testosterone, it's inflammation. We got to look at what the whole system is, right? What's really
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
That's
There's a
that's a
balance that has to be
complex.
struck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a complex. That could be a complex issue as to why sex drive
Yes, it
is low.
is.
Yeah,
But there are options for women who have had cancer and, are interested in doing it. And some people who are just like, you know what? My quality of life sucks so bad because they've got me on this, that, and the other. And now I can't have sex with my husband, or I don't, my hair fell out and I don't feel good about how I look. And so we
yeah,
have ways of helping women get past those things, and
yeah.
hormones can help with that.
Hormones can help. There's other medications. There's peptide therapy, which Dr. Hall
Right.
knows about. That's another conversation. But there are lots of things. Some of them are a little pricey. I'm not going to lie, but you can cycle. You can create a cycle like it's a therapy, and you're done with it. It corrects the problem. You don't stay on it forever. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is what we're doing to get things back. And there are peptides even to bring sex drive back. But
Yeah.
you want to make
Yes.
sure you have the foundation covered first. You don't go up to the third story in a house, you guys, and like pick out the paint color of the bathroom until the first, foundation's built, the first floor is built out. Like that's how you have to do. And hormones are really one of those foundational first floor type of concepts that people want to know about all this stuff. I'm like, that doesn't matter. You need to do this
Yeah.
first.
Great
Like, I don't
analogy
need to
there.
do neurofeedback or like if all the problem is this, fix this. We might not even need to do any of that because this is the
Yeah.
bigger issue, right? So like you
Yeah.
said, why do we need CJC? Get your hormones first, Oh,
Hmm.
didn't
Yeah.
think of that.
Yeah.
Um, well, on that note, is there any last little message for the ladies? We can't cover everything about perimenopause and menopause, you guys. Is there like a good book or anything that you like? They say, oh, women, this is a great book. If you want to know more, is there anything like that? No, it's okay.
They're
It's
they're
okay.
they all come with their little nuggets of wisdom. So if you have time to read, go ahead and read whatever you can find, because there's some
Yeah,
great practitioners out there that have written about this. But
yeah,
you really should just spend the money and go find a good practitioner and work with them, and
I
that's what
agree.
it takes.
I
Because a book's
agree.
not going to give it all to you.
I know, I agree. And we'll have another conversation, maybe another time, because there's definitely this is what I found. So a lot of my following is going to be a meat heavy group, right? You're going to have carnivores or
Yes.
keto, low carb, AIP, paleo, stuff like that, GAPS diet. This is the stuff that I deal with brain work and mental health work. So most of my people are going to be there. A vegan or a vegetarian really isn't going to follow me unless they're sending me death threats, which that happens. It's fun. But that being said, I do find a lot of people will be frustrated why they come to me is they've gone to a clinician and they try to take them like vegetarian or plant-based. And they're like, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, they want you to do
Yeah.
what?
No.
So I don't know. Is that like right? Like I'm going like, no, you don't need to not eat meat because because you're estrogen dominant, you need progesterone or you need, like, I don't understand that whole thinking. So is there anything
Yeah.
about diet or nutrition that you want to add to this? Like, is there any foods or suggestions or what you do, like things that are like big return on investment, you know, small hinges moving a big door? Like, I have my suggestions
Yeah.
I give to people, but
Um,
this is what you specialize in.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. Well, I tell people if I fix your hormones, it's going to make it easier for you to move, which movement leads to a healthier person. Okay. Frozen shoulder hormones will help with frozen shoulder, and that's an
Yeah.
aging process. And if we can get people to start moving more, we're going to see better longevity with them and less people going in for sick care. Okay, and moving outside preferably. Okay. So I'm
Yeah.
more in that, you eat what works for you. Okay. And seriously, we're meant to be meat eaters. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
supposed to eat meat. That's the way it was. We're
Right.
made. That's the way we're made. The
Yeah.
plant thing, that all has to do with heart attacks and cholesterol and whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure it
Yeah.
plays out.
That whole, yeah. Yeah, it's big in this field, though. I have to say, there's some pretty famous, like, women's menopause experts, and they're spouting a lot of that. And so I'm like, oh, like, I really like what she says here, but man, it's this. So women think they have to eat
Mhm.
18 pounds of broccoli for the sulforaphane to get the, to like detox the estrogen. I'm like, no, you really don't need to do that. But, you know what I mean? Like, no, you don't need that. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah. Okay, cool. I just didn't, because people are going to ask, but in general, I like that, right? You get things balanced because it's hard once it starts to happen. It's hard to dig yourself out of the exhaustion or the low mood or the lack of sleep chronically. Because of course we all know you don't have any sleep. Then of course you want the cake the next day. We all have a hard time. That's a proven fact. Studies have proven this over and over again. Your craving for junk food, for carbs increased through the roof, just missing a few hours of sleep. So that is really, that's to me, I think what
Yeah.
happens to women with this. They start not sleeping well, and then the next day they are using food and caffeine and stuff to stimulate, to try and keep going, because they have to keep going because they run the house and the
Yeah.
kids and everything. So mama can't be
Yeah.
tired. So then it just keeps
No. And that's a
compounding on
downward
top of each
spiral.
other. It's a downward spiral. So then the
Exactly.
more cortisol
Mhm.
has to rise, belly fat's there. We don't make growth hormone at night. It just keeps going down and down and down and down. And you just, before
Yes.
you know it, it's 5 pounds, it's 10 pounds, it's 20 pounds. It's, oh, I'm drinking more wine because I can't relax. I have no other way to relax. And then it gets worse and worse and worse. So I started noticing that about myself. I'm like, I think I'm drinking a little too much wine. I mean, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Progesterone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
And
what I mean?
coping mechanisms. So coping mechanisms, but it's like it really does all start with sleep. If we can get people sleeping better, everything is going to
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah. And then you go that next step of, then you can do some walking outside, this and that. Then there's the cold plunging and all these extra layers we're starting to do to get the
Mhm.
system healing itself. But there comes a point, I'm like, Mama, you're 55. I'm not sure why you're waiting on replacing these hormones. Every time a woman does it, she's like, oh my God, I feel 1,000 times better. I cannot believe I waited this long. I'm like, yeah. And I have some women now at 70 that have gone back. Like, they tried it, and I said, and then they're back on. They're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like, everything, because they're still married. Their husband still wants sex. And like, they're
Yeah.
70 now is like, we're doing things. My ex-husband is
Oh, yeah.
70. So like,
Yeah.
he's skiing and he's got a 16-year-old son. He cannot slow down. I'm going to need you to keep it together. Get on your testosterone, get on your stuff, keep it together. You know what I mean?
I love
So
it.
70
I
now
love
is
it.
like, you better be, you should be. Isn't Julian like 70? Isn't
Yeah, he
Julian
is. And
Gershon?
he's in
Yeah.
phenomenal shape. Yeah.
Crazy shape.
Yeah.
There's
We
another
have a doctor
longevity.
friend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
out there. And when I saw him, I'm like, you're what? This dude is
He
way
has a
more
few
fit than
little
me.
gray hairs and not much.
I know.
I know. I'm like,
Ripped.
what?
Skis all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he stays that way because he
Yeah.
stays on it. And he does hormone replace, and he exosomes and stem cells and everything else. But you have to keep moving, and you have to keep thinking and moving like you're young, basically, and that the body keeps responding in your field that way. And hormones are a really important foundation. So please see a professional. Yes. Please, women, do not go through this yourself. I've seen too many women call it the dark night of the soul, and I went through 5 years. I'm like, why the fuck did you sit around depressed for 7 years why? You want to be a martyr, a victim? I don't get it. Go get it handled. Yeah. Go see somebody. And if the first one you see doesn't help you, go to another one. If your OB doesn't know how to do this, find a new one. There's about 100,000 of you, right? Find a new one. I mean,
somewhere around that.
So, yeah, there's a whole lot. And like, there's some good dentists, there's some bad dentists, there's some good lawyers, there's some bad lawyers. Like, go find somebody who will listen to you, who's in private practice. If they work for a hospital.
Us talking is just helping people because we're educating women that there is something that can be done.
Yes.
And
I thought everybody knew that. It's funny that you said they just don't know. I'm like, really?
They just don't know. Yeah.
Well, I want you all to know, please, you do not need to suffer. I wish I knew this at 20 and I would have said to my mother, we will find, I mean, we didn't have any kind of money, so I'm sure she didn't know how she was going to do it. She was this bartender, right? Like, I went to college because we got full scholarships. If I wasn't smart, I'd be in a prison somewhere, you know? So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be in the ghetto like everybody else in my family, right? So, she, you know, whatever little pennies she would have had, if somebody would have told her, Teresa, if you go do this, it'll solve all this problem. She would have been like, I'll sell a suit. I'll sell one of my dresses because I can't handle this. She was on fire all the time, sweating all the time, miserable all the time. I'm like, what the hell's the matter with her? You know?
Nobody has to suffer.
Nobody
and
should
really,
be going through that.
You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be afraid. And if somebody's putting fear into you about hormones, you're at the wrong place. You're at the wrong place.
I love that. That's the best message. That's the best message. You said, don't be afraid. I was actually, what do you mean afraid? I'm like, oh, right. I forget women are afraid of this. Because I don't listen to that dogma. I'm not in the world of normal
They're told
people.
It can cause breast cancer. Yeah. No.
Meanwhile, they're slapping on fucking self-tanner. I don't understand this. Because that will cause you cancer.
Perfume I mean, causes cancer.
Perfume. Yeah, they put on perfume, fucking makeup, skin.
Nail
I'm
polish.
Yeah, horrible. Cindy knows, you guys. She's into natural skincare, natural hair. She understands all that those poisons do to you. She understands homeopathy. She understands things from a bigger picture. So that's the kind of doctor you want to find who's prescribing drugs, that they're looking at the whole picture. Like, she's like, look, I'll do a hysterectomy if I have to. I know how to do it, and I'll put them in my light bed after, but I don't want to have to do that if I don't have to. So if I can get you at 40 to make sure by the time you're 60 you don't need it, what a difference that would make, right?
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, Cindy, thank you so much. I know this was your first one, and I appreciate it. I would love to do another one another time. We'll just talk about maybe the light bed or whatever.
Okay.
Or whatever you want to talk about. Maybe peptides, you know.
We're good, you know, free floating sometimes. We can get ourselves into big trouble just talking.
Some things that'll probably get me banned. I'm like, oh shit, she said that. Cindy doesn't understand the censorship problems. We'll see. We'll see if it gets banned. Yeah. I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being a good physician. You know, you guys get a really bad name because there's a bunch of shitty ones out there, and the good ones like you, I am deeply grateful. I appreciate you busting your ass and taking the burden of putting people under surgery when you need to and life in their hands, and I appreciate it. So
it's a privilege.
Thank you, my friend.
It's an honor and a privilege, and thank you for appreciating me and all of you guys.
You are the least.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
I have never, let me tell you, Cindy, I am going to tell that I have never met a surgeon with less ego than you in my life. I forget you're a surgeon half the time because all of you are so arrogant. And I'm like, oh my God, I think Cindy Hall is the least arrogant surgeon I've ever, I mean, it's like mind boggling to me how little ego you have. You are an astonishing person.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think ego belongs anywhere in this picture of taking care of women.
No, thank you. Thank you for doing the work.
Yeah.
I adore you. You guys, I love her. If you live there, go see her. I'm jealous because I wish I was in Colorado. I do. I wish you could be my doctor. I do. All right, guys. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.